The courtroom smelled like polished wood and something colder bleach, maybe sterile justice. Malik Evans stood silently at the defense table, wrists cuffed in front of him, steel biting into his skin like the system itself. The courtroom was mostly empty. Just a few officers, a bored bailiff, and a tired clerk tapping keys with one acrylic nail. Malik's hoodie sagged off one shoulder. It was the same gray one he'd worn the day they threw him to the ground. The same one with the blood stain on the cuff. They hadn't let him wash it. His hair a bit overgrown, curled around his temples. His eyes sharp, scanning, deliberate, took in every person in the room. He was 17. But in this moment, he looked ageless. Or maybe just forgotten. The judge peered down at him from the bench. Glasses perched at the end of his nose like he was trying not to really see the boy before him. A sigh floated across the courtroom mic, then a faint chuckle. "Well, you've been busy," Judge Crawford said, flipping through the file. "Resisting arrest, assaulting a peace officer. And now, you want to speak on your own behalf?" Another scoff. "You understand the seriousness of this, son?" Malik took a breath, steady and practiced. "Yes, Your Honor. No need for theatrics," the judge cut in, waving a dismissive hand. "You have a public defender for a reason. Let the professionals handle it." The gavel tapped once, not slam, just a tap, like this was all a formality. "A matter of paperwork." Malik said nothing, stood frozen, heart drumming hard in his chest. He had spent weeks preparing for this moment, every clause memorized, every precedent dissected, every right rehearsed, not from some Ivy League prep class, but from a cracked screen and worn-out library books. Alone, quietly, because when you look like Malik, even brilliance gets you profiled. He remembered the arrest like a series of brutal snapshots, walking home with a worn-out backpack, earbuds in, flashing lights, a shout from behind, hands gripping him before he could even turn around. They said he lunged. He hadn't. They said he was aggressive. He was confused. They said he fought back. But it was only panic like any animal cornered in a cage. Malik stared down at his chained wrists. Irony wasn't lost on him. The Constitution he could quote from memory wasn't saving him now. The judge muttered something to the clerk and turned the page in the file. Malik watched the corners of his mouth twitch again, that familiar curl of amusement. The same smirk the arresting officer wore as he shoved Malik's face into concrete. The same expression people give when they don't expect you to know the rules, let alone challenge them. The smirk stung. Not because it surprised him, but because he expected it. No, one here knew he'd spent every night for 2 years poring over legal texts while his neighborhood crumbled outside his window. That he'd written mock briefs for fun, that he could recite Gideon v. Wainwright like gospel. To them, he was a case number, a hoodie, a threat. But Malik had a plan, not a flashy one, not a revenge fantasy, a real plan. Step 1, survive this hearing. Step 2, take back control of his own story. He wasn't here to play smart. He was here to win. They just didn't know it yet. As the guard pulled him by the arm to exit the courtroom, Malik lifted his head one last time toward the bench. He stared into Judge Crawford's eyes, not with anger, but with calculation. "This isn't over," that look said. Not even close. He hadn't always been in handcuffs. Just a week before the arrest, Malik Evans sat in the corner of the Eastwood Community Library, hunched over a thick, worn paperback titled Criminal Procedure, Cases and Comments. His fingers flipped through pages with the ease of muscle memory. His mind danced through precedent, fact patterns, and dissenting opinions. He was 17, yes, but in that moment, his intellect felt older than the room around him. The library's buzzing. Fluorescent lights flickered above. Kids ran down the aisles with overdue excitement. Malik smiled faintly as one of the men 9-year-old named Gian plopped into the seat across from him with a dog-eared copy of Diary of a Wimpy Kid. "Mr. Malik." "I don't get why Greg always be lying," Kian said, kicking his feet. "Because sometimes people lie when they don't know how to tell the truth," Malik replied, closing his book gently. "That's a survival thing." Kian blinked at him. "Oh, that's kind of deep." Malik ruffled his hair. "You'll get it when you're older." Every Tuesday and Thursday, he mentored the younger kids after school, helping with reading, fractions, and sometimes just being someone who listened. Teachers called it community service. Malik called it peace. But Eastwood didn't care if you helped kids or quoted the Bill of Rights. The police, all they saw was 6 feet of melanin and muscle in a zip-up hoodie. He learned long ago. Not to raise his voice, not to correct teachers when they assumed he was slow, not to let anyone know he read legal blogs instead of sports news. Being smart was dangerous. Being visibly smart. Suicidal, so he hid it, except alone at night when the windows rattled from distant gunshots and his mother snored softly in the next room. Malik studied. Supreme Court opinions, habeas corpus petitions, YouTube lectures from professors he'd never meet, his notebooks filled with outlines and case briefs. He didn't know exactly what he was preparing for, only that something was coming. And then, it did. He was walking home, same route, same streetlight flickering by the corner store. His headphones played old Kendrick verses when he heard it shouting behind him. Hands. Hands up. Startled, he turned. 3 officers. Guns out. He froze. "I live here," he said. But they didn't hear that. They only saw motion. A backpack. Brown skin. Then came the tackle. The asphalt. The crack of something in his shoulder. They pinned him like he was a rabid animal, his mouth filled with blood and gravel. "You fit the description?" one officer said flatly, breath hot against his ear. Malik tried to speak, to plead, to explain. But everything blurred. The sirens, the crowd, the cuffs clinking shut. That was the first time he truly understood what people meant when they said the system wasn't broken, it was working exactly as designed. Later, in the back of the cruiser, his mind did something strange. While his face throbbed and the tears dried against his collar, he mentally recited Miranda v. Arizona, line by line. It gave him something to hold on to, something solid in a world pulling him under, because he wasn't guilty. Just gifted, and that was the real threat. As the squad car pulled away and the flashing lights washed the neighborhood in red and blue, Malik's eyes drifted up to the library window, still lit. Still full of books, still waiting for him to fight back. The door clicked open, slow and reluctant, as if even the hinges were tired of this place. Malik stepped into a small, windowless conference room at the county detention center. The walls were bare except for a laminated poster of your rights in 6 languages, peeling at the corners. A stack of manila folders teetered on the desk like the leaning tower of forgotten people. Behind the desk sat a woman in her late 30s, thin-rimmed glasses perched crookedly on her nose, hair pulled into a frazzled bun. Her name was printed on a cracked plastic placard. Ms. Karen Field's public defender. She didn't look up. "Sit," she muttered, flipping through a file. "Evans, right?" "Malik Evans." "Yes, ma'am," Malik replied, settling into the chair. He was calm but alert like a chess player, 3 moves from a checkmate no one else could see. "Okay." Ms. Fields sighed. "So here's the deal. The prosecution's offering a plea. 2 years probation, anger management course, and your record gets sealed when you turn 21. She slid the paper across the table with a pen. Malik didn't touch it. "I didn't assault anyone," he said evenly. "I didn't resist. They threw me to the ground before I said a word." Fields finally looked up. Briefly, her eyes scanned him, not in curiosity, but calculation. She'd seen 100 young men like him this month alone. Dark skin, bruised wrists, a folder filled with assumptions. "Look, Malik," she said, voice flat with fatigue. "I've been doing this job 13 years. I've got 27 open cases this week. You think this system cares whether you resist it or not?" Her voice softened, but not kindly, like someone gently closing a door in your face. "I'm trying to help you. Take the deal." Malik folded his hands. "I want to represent myself." The air shifted. Fields blinked. Once. Twice. Then she chuckled, dry and hollow. "Excuse me?" "I've studied the case law. I know my rights under Ferretta v. California. I have the capacity to waive counsel. I want to speak for myself in court." Beat of silence. Then the laugh came again, louder this time. It's almost cruel. "You want to play lawyer now?" she said, leaning back in her chair. "Kid, this isn't TV. You get one shot. They'll eat you alive in that courtroom." Malik met her gaze without blinking. They already did. She stared at him, something unreadable flickering in her expression. Then she sighed, scribbled something in his file, and mumbled, "Fine. Waste your time if you want." She didn't ask him why he wanted to do it, didn't ask what he knew, didn't ask who he was. She closed the folder and moved on to the next. Name in the pile. Malik sat there for a moment longer, his hands still folded. The noise of the detention center buzzed around him, keys jangling, distant yelling, the shuffle of lives being processed. The door opened again. A guard beckoned. Malik stood. He would go to court alone, but not unarmed. The courtroom looked no different than it had the first time. Same polished wood, same stiff-backed benches, same judge leaning over the bench like he'd rather be anywhere else. But this time, Malik's hands weren't cuffed. He walked into the courtroom slowly, methodically, wearing a borrowed blazer 2 sizes too big. The sleeves swallowed his wrists, but he held his head high. Every step echoed louder than it should have. Ms. Fields was nowhere in sight. Judge Crawford flipped through his folder with habitual indifference. Case number 1298C, Malik Evans. Pretrial hearing. He adjusted his glasses, then looked up. "Where's counsel?" Malik stepped forward. "I'll be representing myself, Your Honor." The words were crisp, measured. The courtroom fell into an awkward silence. Judge Crawford blinked. "Excuse me? I've submitted a formal Ferretta motion. I'd like to waive counsel and proceed pro se." A murmur rippled through the gallery. Even the stenographer paused for a moment before catching up. The judge leaned back, eyebrows rising like he was watching a dog try to play chess. "Well, that's ambitious," he said, chuckling. "You understand you're facing serious charges here, son. This isn't a school debate club." "I'm aware, Your Honor," Malik replied, voice steady despite the thudding in his chest. "I have a constitutional right to self-representation." Ferretta v. California, 422 U.S. 806, decided 1975. Crawford raised a brow. "You memorize case law for fun?" "I study law," Malik answered, "extensively." The judge drummed his fingers on the bench, trying to read the boy in front of him, still in that oversized blazer, still just 17, still from a zip code he didn't care to pronounce. But something about the tone, the posture was off script. "You realize," the judge said slowly, "if I grant this motion, you're responsible for your own defense. No do-overs, no pity. I understand. You'll be held to the same standards as a licensed attorney." "Yes, Your Honor." A long pause. Then, laughter again, dry, theatrical. "Well," Crawford said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes, "this'll be entertaining." He flipped through the paperwork. Motion granted. Pro se representation approved. We'll reconvene for preliminary arguments next week. Good luck, Mr. Evans. You'll need it. Gavel. Tap. The sound echoed like a gunshot as the courtroom slowly emptied. A young woman in the back, someone Malik hadn't noticed before, scribbled furiously in a small notebook. A journalist, maybe, or just curious. Malik stood still, jaw tight, hands at his sides. Judge Crawford didn't know it yet, but he just invited something he wasn't ready for. And Malik had work to do. The sound of the gavel still echoed. In Malik's ears, as he stepped out of the courtroom, the hallway buzzed with quiet tension, briefcases snapping shut, murmured phone calls, heels tapping like ticking clocks. But Malik walked in silence, aware of every glance, every breath that lingered on his back a second too long behind him. The woman with the notebook followed at a distance. She hadn't spoken to him yet, but her eyes had stayed locked on him. Longer than anyone else's had in that courtroom, she'd seen something. Not just the defiance, but the precision. The quiet, shaking brilliance that leaked out of his voice, even when he tried to keep it buried. Malik turned the corner and disappeared. Into the elevator without looking back. At home that night, the living room was dim. The curtains were drawn. The TV off. The silence heavy. His mother sat curled in the corner of the couch, with a half-finished sewing project in her lap. The needle sat motionless between her fingers. "You said what?" she asked softly. "I told the judge I'm defending myself," Malik replied, standing in the doorway like a shadow. She set the fabric aside and looked up at him, eyes, tired, voice tight. Why would you do that, Malik? It's because no one else will. Not really. Her breath caught. Malik stepped inside, finally letting the blazer slide off his shoulders. It hit the couch like a weight. Ma, he said gently, I've been reading court transcripts for 2 years. I know the rules better than half the lawyers they throw at kids like me. She shook her head slowly. They don't care how smart you are, they only see your skin. I know, he said. That's why I need to show them more. Her eyes brimmed with something unspoken, fear, pride, grief, all tangled together. She didn't say another word, just pulled him into a tight, trembling hug. Late that night, while the city murmured in its sleep, Malik sat cross-legged on the bedroom floor, surrounded by a fortress of books and printouts. Lighters bled color across pages. His laptop screen flickered with paused lectures, a law school professor dissecting Terry v. Ohio, another reviewing cross-examination techniques. One window on his browser held a spreadsheet, dozens of tabs, tracking police misconduct cases in his district. Another tab displayed his handwritten notes on evidentiary rules. He worked like a surgeon in training, deliberate, meticulous. Obsessed every night for the last 2 years, this had been his ritual. After homework, after dishes, after making sure his little cousin was asleep in the next room, he studied. In secret. Quietly, because smart black boys get misunderstood, and outspoken ones get punished. He knew what it meant to be called articulate, like it was a surprise. To have teachers tell him he was exceptional, like that made him safe? It didn't. Once in middle school, he corrected a teacher's explanation of the Fourth Amendment. The next day, he was sent to the principal's office for disruption. That was the moment he learned. Brilliance made people uncomfortable, if it lived in the wrong body, but Malik never stopped reading. He studied defense strategies like war plans, memorized the rules of evidence like scripture. Every headline of wrongful convictions, every collapsed trial, every quiet tragedy in a courtroom, he treated like a blueprint. A warning. And now, someone in the courtroom had noticed. The woman with the notebook. As Malik finally leaned back, exhaustion tugging at his eyes, he remembered her face, curious, focused. Maybe just maybe someone else was finally paying attention. The courtroom was fuller this time. A few rows of community members sat watching, some curious, some skeptical, some just present. And in the back, the reporter from before sat again, pen in hand. The light caught her glasses as she tracked Malik's every word at the front. Malik stood behind the defense table, posture upright, papers carefully ordered. Judge Crawford adjusted his robe with a sigh and motioned toward the witness stand. Proceed. With cross-examination, Mr. Evans. Malik stepped forward, slow but focused. Every step planned. He didn't look at the gallery, didn't glance at the judge. Just the man on the stand, Officer Brent Large. Mid-40s, white, square jaw. Clipped answers, badge polished like armor. Officer Large, Malik began, voice steady, on the night of October 17th. You claimed I was aggressively approaching you when you exited your patrol car, correct? Large shifted, that's right. You stated in your initial report that I reached into my waistband. Yes. Malik nodded, flipping a page on the podium. Yet in the footage from your partner's dash cam submitted by the prosecution, can be heard shouting, "Don't move," before your door even closes. Larch's mouth twitched. Standard protocol. So, you issued a "don't move" command. To someone you say was already reaching? Silence. Malik stepped closer. Your body cam, where is it? It malfunctioned. You stated that in your report, Malik said, holding up a printed document. But internal maintenance logs from your department, obtained via public records, request indicate your body cam passed inspection 2 days prior. No malfunction recorded. A faint ripple went through the gallery. Larch's lips pressed into a hard line. Let me ask again, Malik said, voice calm but razor-edged. Where's the footage of my alleged aggression? The judge cleared his throat. Mr. Evans, no further questions. Malik said, stepping back with quiet precision. A long silence followed. Even Judge Crawford didn't speak immediately. He rubbed his chin, looking at Larch, like the story had suddenly become less convenient. In the gallery, someone muttered, "Damn." Larch stepped down from the witness stand, his boots sounding heavier than before. He avoided Malek's eyes. The prosecutor stood to redirect, but even she seemed hesitant now. Malek returned to the defense table and sat slowly, heart pounding, but face unreadable. In that moment, the entire courtroom shifted. It was in the Iran unspoken awareness. This kid wasn't guessing. He was calculating. Judge Crawford shifted in his seat, not looking amused anymore, not dismissive, just ... unsettled. And in the back, the reporter underlined a phrase in her notebook. Malek didn't smile. Couldn't. Not yet. Not here. He glanced down at his notes and turned the page. This wasn't a performance. This was survival. By the next morning, his name was trending, just not in the way Malek feared. A grainy cell phone clip had made its way online. Malek standing, poised in the courtroom, unraveling a veteran officer's testimony without raising his voice. The caption: Reed, 17-year-old, defends himself in court. Tand outsmarts the system. The clip was just 63 seconds, but it caught fire. By noon, it had 500,000 views. By sunset, Malek's inbox was flooded. At home, the phone rang every hour. Reporters, community leaders, strangers from across the country. But one message stood out as short. Direct email from a local defense attorney named Jamal Ruiz. Saw what you did. Proud of you. Let's talk strategy. We fight better together. Malik met Ruiz 2 days later. At a neighborhood cafe, not a corporate chain, but a black-owned shop tucked between a barber and a check-cashing place. The air smelled like cinnamon and roasted beans. Ruiz was tall, Afro-Latino, with braids pulled back and calloused hands. He wore jeans, not a suit. Malek liked that. I saw the video, Ruiz said, sliding a legal pad across the table. More important, I read your filings. You've got teeth, Malek, real teeth, but teeth still need a pack. Malek hesitated. You want to be my lawyer? No, Ruiz said. I want to be your backup. You're already leading. I just want to keep you from getting blindsided. Malik looked at him, unsure whether to be grateful or defensive. But Ruiz didn't push. He just nodded. We don't get many chances to name ourselves, he said. Don't let them define yours. That evening, Malek returned home to find flyers stacked on the stoop. An activist group, Justice 11, had printed them overnight. His name is Malek Evans, and he is not a threat. Underneath his photo, the same still from the courtroom video, blazer too big, eyes locked forward. His mother held the flyer in her hands like it was made of glass. Her fingers trembled. They're finally seeing you, she whispered. Malik looked away. No. He said, they're finally listening. The final court session began under gray skies. Rain tapped gently against the windows as Malik adjusted the knot of his borrowed tie, hand steady. Ruiz gave him a nod from the gallery. Nothing dramatic, just enough. His mother sat beside him, eyes rimmed red, a tissue clenched in her palm. The courtroom was packed now. Reporters lined the walls, students, elders, activists from Justice 11. No one dared speak. Judge Crawford took the bench slowly. No smirk today, no scoffing chuckle. He looked older, smaller. Malik rose. He approached the center of the room and faced the jury box, though the hearing didn't require one. Symbol mattered now, Your Honor, he began, voice calm. Thank you for allowing me to speak. A pause. Then he continued. When I walked into this courtroom for the first time, I wasn't seen as someone capable of defending myself. I was seen as a headline waiting to happen, a threat with a hoodie, a body made for handcuffs. He turned slightly, eyes scanning the silent room. I didn't choose this path to make a statement. I chose it because the system gave me no other option. I asked for help. I was dismissed. I asked to speak. I was mocked. Judge Crawford shifted but said nothing. I was told I was lucky to be offered a plea, lucky not to be in jail longer, lucky the officer didn't shoot. A murmur stirred in the gallery, But I didn't assault anyone. I didn't resist. And I didn't forget the rights the Constitution gave me, even if this courtroom did. Malik stepped forward. Terry v. Ohio. Gideon v. Wainwright. Miranda v. Arizona. These aren't just names in a book to me. They were lifelines. They were. The only voices that answered when no one else would. He paused. Let the silence breathe. I know I'm not supposed to be standing here. Not like this. Not educated. Not prepared. Not confident. I know the laugh you gave me, Your Honor, when I first spoke wasn't personal. It was generational. The words landed like thunder. Crawford's jaw tightened. Malik's voice never wavered. You laughed, because that's what happens when someone like me steps out of the narrative. But I am not your narrative. I am not your defendant. I am not your expectation. You let that hang. I'm Malik Evans, and I demand to be seen not as a file, not as a hoodie, not as a future mugshot. Took one last breath. But as a citizen. With rights, with truth, with voice, he stepped back, sat down. The courtroom was dead silent, no. One laughed, not even the judge. The courtroom didn't breathe. Judge Crawford stared down at the bench for a long time, his fingers steepled. The silence stretching taut across every pew. Malik sat still, hands folded in his lap, gaze fixed straight ahead. His mother reached out, her fingers brushing his wrist, steadying him. Or maybe herself. When the judge finally spoke, his voice was quieter than anyone expected. After review of the evidence presented, given the inconsistencies in testimony and missing documentation, this court finds the charges of resisting arrest and assault on an officer dismissed. A pause, the defendant is released. Release, the word rang like church bells, but no one shouted or cheered. Even freedom felt heavy in this room. Malik stood. The shackles weren't there this time, but the weight still lingered on his shoulders, in his spine, in the parts of him no verdict could undo. He nodded, respectful, controlled. Crawford avoided his eyes. The public defender, Ms. Fields, stood. Near the door? She gave him a slight nod, then extended a hand. He hesitated, then shook it. Didn't think you'd pull that off, she said, almost smiling. But you did. It was never about pulling it off, Malik replied. Just surviving. She looked down, said nothing else. On his way out, Malik passed Officer Larch. The man stared at the wall like it owed him something. He didn't blink, didn't speak, just clenched his jaw and let Malik walk by like a ghost that wouldn't leave. The air outside hit Malik's lungs like a wave. Gray sky, wet sidewalks, cameras clicking in the distance. Rui stepped forward, hand on his shoulder. You good? He asked. Malik gave a slow nod, but didn't speak. He looked back at the courthouse doors. He'd walked in a suspect. He walked out a symbol, but symbols carried weight. Expectations, fear, hope, and pain. Malik exhaled deeply, stuffing his hands into his coat pockets. The crowd around him shifted, but he kept walking, head down, eyes forward. He was free, but he wasn't untouched. The lecture hall buzzed with low chatter as students filed in, laptops opening, coffee cups clinking against desks. A whiteboard stretched across the front wall, clean except for one phrase written in thick black marker. The law is not neutral. It's a tool. Who wields it tanned. How to find justice. Malik sat in the third row, notebook open, pen in, hand. He still didn't raise his voice much, still scanned rooms before speaking. But now, when he walked into places like this, the air changed. Some recognized him instantly. Others whispered after class, trying to place where they'd seen. His face, he didn't need them to remember the headline. He needed them to remember the truth. He belonged here. The professor walked in late, flustered and apologizing, then turned to the board. Let's talk about precedent, she began, her eyes flicking toward Malik with a knowing glance. 3 months had passed since his case was dismissed. A community-led petition sparked by the footage of his cross-examination had forced the city to pass. Body Cam Integrity Order 47. requiring officers to submit unedited footage within 48 hours of any arrests involving minors. It wasn't everything, but it was something Malik hadn't planned on becoming a symbol. But now, community groups invited him to speak. Professors asked for his input. Teenagers from Eastwood DM'd him their essays asking for feedback. He read every one. And yet freedom had not erased the shadows. He still jumped when he heard sirens behind him, still kept receipts, still made sure his hoodie was off before he walked into certain stores. Survival habits don't vanish overnight, but something was different now. When he walked through his old neighborhood, people didn't just nod, they stopped. They said, "That's Malik. Not that kid who got arrested. Not that troublemaker. Just Malik." One night, as he left the library near campus, a young boy, maybe 12, ran up behind him, breathless. "Hey, Dot, are you the one from court? From the video?" Malik turned, surprised. "I guess I am," he said. The boy smiled, holding out a folded sheet of paper. "I want to be like you." Malik took the paper, a drawing of a boy in a courtroom, standing tall, no chains. He swallowed hard, managed a nod. "Be better," he said quietly. "Be louder. I'll be watching." The boy ran off. Malik looked up at the sky, stars barely visible between city lights. He wasn't a defendant anymore. He was a name they knew. A name they couldn't ignore. A name they wouldn't forget. Malik Evans.
Subscribe and press the bell icon so that you never miss the amazing video.